Hello and welcome to another episode of the Crowing Cockerel podcast. This episode, we are going to be concentrating on club legends, but we're going to do it a bit differently, aren't we? So we're going to talk about club legends that were, and maybe the more unsung club legends, the ones that go under the radar a little bit.
Our personal legends.
Our personal legends, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, absolutely. But what we're also going to do, which might get us cancelled, is we're going to talk about club legends that we just don't get or didn't feel or didn't get fully on board with. So I think what we should do is start with who we remember as our own cult heroes and our own legends that aren't going to get statues built before them, but we'll always have a special place in our heart for. So Tom, who's yours?
Well, thank you very much, Graham, for putting me on the spot. But thankfully I know exactly who my unsung club legend is, and that's a certain Mr. Stephen Carr.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know what it was about Carr, but when I watched him play, I thought, I could do that. I thought I can hang out on the wing and just run up and down.
I was going to say, he had a running style that was like determined, and you could see that it would be a bit annoying if you were chasing him. And that does remind me of playing football with you, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Maximum effort. Look, we connected on a very deep and personal level. Now, Stephen Carr was with us for quite a while, but I'm going to ask you, how long do you think Stephen Carr was with us?
I reckon he was there for over 10 years, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think it's a long time. Yeah.
He was with us 11 years.
Yeah.
His first game for us was in 1993.
Wow.
Really?
Was it?
Wow.
Yeah. And he played 272 games for us.
Is that all?
272 games, yeah.
In 11 seasons?
I think you've got to remember, Spurs at that time did a lot of rotating of the fullbacks. We brought in players, and then Carr would get rotated in and out. If you're talking about a fullback, if you think about fullbacks now, all fullbacks are considered attacking fullbacks. But when attacking fullbacks started to be a thing, so I'm thinking of Gary Neville, Andy Hinchcliffe at Everton, and we had Stephen Carr. And you got these fullbacks that just to bomb on. And it was exciting. You know, you got a player who should be in defence trying to bomb past the midfield and swing a ball in. In those 272 games, he scored 8 goals for us, which isn't a great return, but he is a fullback. But most importantly, he scored that absolute screamer against Man United. As straight an arrow as a shot as you've ever seen. I think the only one that is similar in my mind was Eric Edman.
Yes.
Against Liverpool. If you're talking about absolutely arrow straight, it was a complete perler, but from a fullback. So when a player does that, you just go, yeah, you're a dude.
He gets my vote as a fellow member of the right back club.
But yeah, the Man United goal, I could watch that again and again and again, because the difference between that goal and the Eric Edman, for example, Eric Edman walked forward and you could see he didn't really know what he was going to do, and he just thought, I'll have a go.
Yeah.
Whereas Carr was almost at full pelt.
Yeah.
And it just bobbled a bit, didn't it? And you could just see, right, bang, I'm just going to hit this. And it absolutely flew in the top corner. You beat Man United, it was at the time, were obviously going for the treble, I guess.
It was one of those, wasn't it, that it was a good job it went in, because I think if it had gone over, it might still be travelling now. Like, he hit that ball so hard. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And I think he was as surprised. Like, if you see his reaction after the goal, it was almost like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He does get absolutely mobbed.
No, good choice. Good choice.
Really, really good. Right, Mark, who's yours? Who's your statue that's never going to happen?
Well, I mean, you say it's never going to happen. I might put it in my own garden, because so this player is definitely a cult hero. He is somebody who, when we were preparing for this pod and we were talking about this subject, and I knew instantly who I was going to talk about, but I couldn't really remember why I loved him so much. But I know that I have a Spurs shirt with his name on it, and I know that I did love him. And the name of that player is Simon Davies.
Yeah.
He played for Spurs. We signed him in the year 2000 from Peterborough, and he played right midfield, right wing. He also played in the middle a bit as well. Welsh international, and again, he was somebody who he was never really a first team regular as such. He was kind of in and out of the team, but he was just somebody a bit like Stephen Carr, to be honest. He was somebody who always gave absolutely everything when he played. He was up and down that pitch. He really was a bundle of energy. He used to get back. He was one of these more sort of defensive wingers. He always used to be doing that job, that sort of ugly part of the game really well, which was fairly unusual for those wide midfielders. But he also had a really good cross. He was supplying the ammunition for Ferdinand and Sheringham, who were the strikers at the time. And like I say, I don't really know what it was about him, what it was about. Like he's the first player that I had on the back of my shirt. I didn't have any other player before him.
You must have been the only person to have had him on the back
And,
of your shirt.
and not only that, you've got to remember at that time, you had to pay per number. He was number 29. So not only I loved him that much that I got his name and I got his number, but yeah, I just loved watching him play. Again, probably for similar sort of reasons, like I say, because he always gave absolutely 100%. Even though actually you look at his stats and they're nothing special. I mean, I've got them here. He only played just over 120 games for us and scored 12 goals, 26 assists. It's nothing to write home about. He did all right, but he played for us on the right-hand side at that time when Darren Anderton moved into the middle. So Darren Anderson, if you remember, when he started at the club, he was traditional right midfield, right winger, and then when he got older, he moved into the middle and into this playmaker role, and that provided the room for Simon Davies. But Davies' main competition was Aaron Lennon, so of course it was always going to be a struggle for him to get into that team. But no, I love Simon Davies. One of the highlights I think from Simon Davies was he scored in our 5-1 League Cup semi-final win against Chelsea.
Oh, yeah.
Again, he didn't start the game, came off the bench, but he scored the fourth goal, put us 4-0 up. It was a lovely near post strike past the goalkeeper. And yeah, it was, in a way, it was a typical Simon Davies performance. Started on the subs bench, came off, impacted the game. And yeah, I loved him for that. Just one of those players, like you say. I was probably only one of about 3 people that would have bought the name off his shirt. But yeah, had a love for him, and yeah, he's definitely my Spurs cult hero for sure.
Fair play.
I mean, absolutely fair play, because I don't think the sort of players that I was thinking of and going to mention were nowhere near as left field as Simon Davies.
It's strange because I was doing a little bit of research on his stats, and I couldn't believe how insignificant he was, really.
Sorry, Simon, if you're watching and
sorry,
listening.
Simon.
Sorry.
We'll edit that
Sorry.
bit out.
Okay, a bit like what Mark was saying about Simon Davies, that you have this affiliation with them and you're not entirely sure why. Because it goes right back to when I was first old enough to watch Spurs a lot, and they were on TV a lot. They won the 91 Cup final. He was in that squad. His reputation was that he was just a really good, solid squad player, really hard working. And he'd come on and he'd come into the team and he'd do a job. But he wasn't spectacular in any way, shape, or form. And I think I just connected with the fact that he just looked like he always wanted to do well and win. And that's David Howells.
Yeah.
David Howells. Yeah.
So,
Great shout.
if you go back to, 91 cup winning squad, you had your Gaza and your Lineker, your Mabbott, and,
yeah.
people like that. And David Howells would never be seen as, the reason we won that 91 cup final, or, that period was successful or not. Whilst Gaza was my go-to player and he was my idol, when I was sort of that age, David Howells was, I felt, always the reason or the type of player that you could have a Gaza in your team, because you need the guy that's going to do the hard graft and do the proper stuff. So your Gazas and the sort of player I wanted to be would be able to shine. And I think that's maybe, thinking about it, why I liked him, is because if I was ever going to want to play football the way I wanted to play football, I needed a David Howells.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be a disaster. So he was a bit like the yang to my yin.
Maybe that was the only thing that stopped you, Graham. Maybe that was the only thing that stopped you, is that you just didn't
You
have
never
it.
played with David Howells.
Yeah, you never played with David Howells.
It wasn't even a player like David Howells. You needed David Howells.
Yeah.
And I think actually what you're saying is he is there, he is dependable, he is professional. But he played for us for about 13 years, was it?
He played for ages, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. He was one of those players that was probably, his name was almost first on the team sheet because he fulfilled one of those roles. This is going to sound ridiculous, but if you think of a player like Keane or Vieira, those players that you go, right, I'm going to stick them there, and they're going to make sure that we are solid, that we are committed, and that the focus is 100% there. And you can't say that about all the players, especially some of the ones that used to play for Tottenham. No, I think David Howells would definitely be on my list of those unsung heroes. Good choice.
I just don't know really why in my heart there's a place for David Howells.
So I think, listening to your two choices and my choice, I think there is a common theme that goes between David Howells and Simon Davies and Stephen Carr. And I think what it is that they're relatable because they're not the superstars. You know, when you look at the superstars, you think they're playing a different game to anything that I could ever think of achieving. But when you get to these players that they've got to the Premier League, they've won an FA Cup, they've done this, they've done that. And on the face of it, actually, they've got fairly limited ability in relative terms to a Premier League footballer. But they're still out there, they're doing it, and they're absolutely maximising every last ounce of talent that they have. And I think those are the sorts of players that fans love because they are 100% determination, 100% committed, that they are going to give everything that they have to the cause. And it's just, you know, sometimes you look at the players that have got this God-given natural ability. If only they gave the same amount of effort as some of these players that didn't have that, then what a player they would be. But yeah, I think those players, that what they lack up for in natural talent, they put in with that sort of determination and effort. I think fans are always going to be getting behind those sorts of players.
Yeah, it's a good shout, that.
Right, now we're going to get really quite controversial. And if we're going to get any comments, it's going to be for this section, isn't it? Because now we're going to come up with bona fide legends of the club.
Apparently.
When they are mentioned, we just stand at the back smiling because we're not completely on board with it, because either we just haven't felt affiliated to them, or for whatever reason, it just hasn't happened in our hearts. And I'm going to start now. So I'm going to put my head above the parapet first. And before I say anything, I will say I'm not denying that this guy was an absolutely amazing footballer. He was brilliant. And you can watch the real clips and some of the goals he scored, and he was a superstar for Spurs as well. But I just couldn't get on board with it, and there's a number of reasons I'll go through. But the player is Davies.
Oh, ooh la la.
Now, in my defence, there's a number of reasons for this. Okay, and
they better be good.
I've said David Ginola, but Les Ferdinand was also one of my options. Okay?
Really?
Yeah. Now, and I think there is a reason for this, and it goes back to my circumstances when they were in the Spurs team and the Spurs team. So first off, the Spurs team of that time wasn't great. Now, admittedly, it had Stephen Carr in it, had Les Ferdinand in it, so it should have been good. But it was also the period of George Graham, big changes, and I was also just out of school. And I was in my first job, and my first proper job, I had to work weekends. So I worked in a shop, basically. You know, whilst I was at school, I could watch the Spurs games when they were on telly, you know, or go to the Spurs games, you know, if I could get a ticket. But at this period, the only time I really got to watch Spurs was basically Match of the Day, so shortened highlights. And Spurs weren't in a position where Match of the Day gave much of a care about them, really. So
we were always last on in those days.
And I'd had a busy day at work, so staying up to watch Match of the Day was a chore at the best of times, but I was quite tired. by the time the Spurs got on. So I just guess that it was at the wrong period for me.
So what you're saying here, Graham, is
Yeah.
that it's your fault.
Well, because I know that it sounds ridiculous because David is an icon. He was, he was a fantastic footballer. He's a sort of footballer that I should love because he was that maverick winger, stardust on everything, create something out of nothing. Yeah, it's just like
Wow. Well, I would like to say that Graham's opinion does not necessarily represent the overall opinion of this podcast.
But well, let's wait to see what you guys come out with because I think actually out of the three, this might not be the worst take.
Yeah, which is why I'm gonna go next, and I'm gonna keep it brief, and I'm gonna keep it French.
Oh,
yeah, this could be the death knell for Tom in the pod, but I never really got on board with how good everybody else said Hugo Lloris was.
interesting.
A World Cup winner,
Club captain.
I suppose for goalkeepers, they tend to get forgotten a bit, to be fair, unless you are a real personality, someone like Schmeichel. So getting really passionate about a goalkeeper is difficult, but a long-serving goalkeeper, a captain of the club, somebody who's represented their country and won a World Cup, deserves respect. But for me, and especially towards the end of his Spurs career, I always felt like there's a mistake in this guy. And I did a bit of research trying to find how many mistakes he was making across this. The one thing I did find was a period of time in 2023, so again towards the end of his Spurs career, where I think he made 4 mistakes across 7 games, which led to goals which either lost us a game or meant that we drew from a winning position. And those things stick with you. We've spoken before about players who've made mistakes and then not really recovered from them. They do that and it just sticks in the brain. And I think as well, with Lloris, he was with us for so long and he was considered such a stalwart of the team. But even during that period, I still felt like that we were a team that were never really secure at the back. And that comes from the keeper. I think the only difference to that is maybe that Champions League run all the way to the final. I think you can mark that out as a period where everybody stepped up. But other than that, a good keeper, but a great keeper, I think definitely a keeper who probably stayed a little too long and did so because of his reputation, not necessarily because he was the best keeper that we could get. So yeah, for me, never really got on board with Hugo.
Right. I don't know where to start with this. I'm a bit too young to remember the Pat Jennings era, so I can't comment on things. But surely Hugo Lloris is the best goalkeeper we've had since Pat Jennings. Yes, he made a few mistakes, but generally he was incredibly solid. His reflexes were astonishing at times. The saves he pulled off, some of them were just absolutely incredible. And he played nearly every game over all his career with Spurs until the end, which ended pretty sadly, really. And that's the one thing I can agree with. Maybe he stayed a season or two too long. But that happened with a few Spurs players, especially the ones that have had fantastic careers with us. And you could argue that he never got over the line in all those years he was with us, which is, again, sad for him. But apart from your reasoning, Tom, around goalkeepers are difficult to, because they're difficult to get on board with as a bona fide legend because of the position, I think you're harsh. I think, compared
I didn't
to what
say you'd like it.
Compared to what, because in my defence with the Gennaro thing, what came before, your Gaza, your Anderton, those sort of players in that position, and what came after, your Bale, he was a long line of maverick winger type players and just didn't do it for me for some reason. Hugo Lloris came after Brad Fiedel, who was all right. Casey Keller was all right.
Yeah.
Aurelio Gomez.
Yes.
Mark could do a whole episode on it.
I could do a whole episode on Aurelio Gomez.
In his time with us, a long time, it didn't work out for him. And of course, he's not the only one responsible for keeping the goals out, but he is the keeper and he was the captain. And as I say, I think his career severely dipped in those last 2-3 seasons, and it soured it.
Well, Thomas, I think you make valid points. I would like you to hold my beer.
Okay.
Because what you mentioned about club legends and essentially everybody else being of one opinion that this person is quite possibly one of the greatest players that we've ever had at the club. For me, I've just never been on board with it. Not that they weren't a good player, but when I think back to, if you ask me to name a whole list of club legends just off the top of my head, this player would never come into the conversation for me. It's just not somebody that I naturally think of as a legend. It's not somebody that I have a great affection for. And that player's Ledley King.
How do I hang up? Do I hang up? Is it the red button? I just press the red button. Is it?
I mean, I'm surprised that the picture behind me, the frame shirt behind me, hasn't fallen off in shock.
I know.
Come on, Mark. You've got to reason up now. Reason up.
Well, I will. So I've got an analogy. It's a bit like, for me, Britain's Got Talent. You've got somebody on the stage there. They're an all right performer, but they always get through if they've got a story, a little sob story. Ledley King only had one knee. Would he have been as fated and as legendary if he actually had two knees and still did the same performances? Like, I don't know. I understand that it was an amazing thing that he never trained and he kept on playing. But yeah, like I say, I just can't get on board with the fact that he is so highly regarded at the club. I just don't get it. Explain it to me, boys. Explain it to me. See, you've got nothing. You've got nothing.
I was waiting there for the person with the signed shirt to go.
Because I think you've got to be calm in this situation when you're debating with an idiot. You have to make sure. But first off, he was an absolutely incredible defender. He was the sort of defender that was so good they hardly ever got dirty. You know, you don't see him sliding around all over the place and having rows with people and having to go two-footed with people. He would just put a striker in his pocket just by being brilliant. He was quick. He was decent on the ball. He was Spurs through and through. And okay, you can possibly, of course, make the argument that the reason he stayed with Spurs all through his career is because of his injury problems. But there is no doubt that if he didn't have those injury problems, he would have been seen and wanted by every single club in the world. He was that good. And I think there's plenty of stories around opposition strikers when they're asked who was the best defender they played against. Ledley King comes up time and time.
Yeah, he does.
And time again.
I have heard those.
And the very fact that, he couldn't train, he's absolute agony most of the time. But what he wanted to do was play for the club. I mean, you get legend status for just putting yourself through hell to play for Spurs. But the fact that when you turn up, you are that good. 2008 League Cup final performance, couldn't walk for the weeks leading up to it. And then for 120 minutes, he was absolutely phenomenal against a really good Chelsea team, including Didier Drogba. He went away with England in the Euros. He didn't play hardly any games, and still England were desperate to take him to the Euros because he was still the best other than John Terry defender in the Premier League. And he went on against France, didn't he? And he got injured almost straight away because he was always injured, unfortunately.
I mean, I do understand that the weight of evidence suggests that it's not a popular opinion, but what can I do? That's what the subject is. Yeah, just for some reason, it's just like I say, I've never regarded him as that top tier legend in my mind. He never comes into my mind as somebody that's in that conversation, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary.
The thing about Ledley that made me realise what a good player he is as well, he's one of those players, kind of like John Stones, where...
Well, that's destroyed your argument to start with.
Yeah.
Kind of like John Stones, as in managers went, you are so good on the ball. If we need to play you in midfield, we will play you in midfield. And you don't do that with a centre-back. Sometimes you'll get a midfielder, running back and helping out the defence, but you don't put a defender in the middle of the pitch and ask him to control a game or hold up the ball or pick out a pass. But more than one manager did that with Ledley King, and I think, especially his need not to run more than 5 meters in a 2-week period. The fact that so many managers still thought, we can put Ledley there and he will do a fantastic job for us. That to me sort of means that you have to look at him as more than just a good defender. He was a really, really good footballer. So I think you're wrong.
It is what it is. You can't change the way you feel.
I know. I'm sorry, Ledley. I'm sorry to everybody.
Well, Mark, I think we might have to leave it there, because right now we're going to have to spend all of our time and any available funds on your witness protection program.
Oh, you don't even want to hear my opinions on Sol Campbell.
Right, where's that red button again?